At 2:14 hours local time, Crimea's air defense network was still online. At 2:15, it wasn't. No warning, no escalation, just a sudden collapse of signals across multiple command channels inside Sevastopol. By the time Russian operators realized something was wrong, the first impacts had already begun. This wasn't a drone raid, it was a coordinated system strike, and it had been building for months. Hours before the attack, Ukrainian intelligence had already mapped the entire operational picture across Crimea. Satellite imagery, intercepted communications, radar emission patterns, and personnel movement cycles were fused into a single targeting grid. Every facility had a function, every function had a priority, and every priority had a strike window. But this operation wasn't just about hitting infrastructure, it was about timing, because Ukraine didn't strike when the targets were empty. It struck when they were full, at peak personnel density. At 2:17, the first drones crossed into the Sevastopol defense sector, flying low enough to remain below the primary radar horizon of long-range systems like the S-400. Terrain masking along the coastline and electronic warfare interference distorted what little tracking data Russian operators could see. To them, it looked like noise. To Ukraine, it was an opening. The first confirmed hit landed on the Lukamka training center, a facility Russia relied on to rebuild its officer corps after 4 years of losses across the Black Sea Fleet. This wasn't just a training ground. It was where commanders met, where tactics were updated, where the next generation of naval leadership was formed. And on that night, it was full. The impact wasn't a single strike, it was a sequence. One drone hit, then another, then another. Buildings inside the complex were struck in rapid succession, fires spreading across structures used for briefings, coordination, and operational planning. Within minutes, the Black Sea Fleet lost more than infrastructure. It lost part of its future command pipeline. But that was only the first layer. At 2:21, a second wave of drones shifted toward a far more critical target: the Air Defense Radio Technical Intelligence Headquarters. This facility wasn't visible from the outside as something extraordinary, but inside, it was the brain of Crimea's entire air defense umbrella. Operators inside this complex monitored the sky continuously. Every drone, every missile, every aircraft movement across the peninsula. Radar feeds, signal interception, tracking data, all fused into one real-time picture. That picture was what allowed systems like the S-400, Panzer S-1, and Tor M2 to function as a coordinated defense network. Without it, they were blind. The strike hit with the same precision. Multiple drones impacted the structure within seconds of each other. Antennas collapsed. Processing units were destroyed. Power systems failed. Inside, the flow of data stopped. And when the data stopped, so did coordination. Across Crimea, Russian air defense units began to operate independently. No shared targeting picture, no synchronized intercepts, no centralized command. Gaps began to form, and Ukraine knew exactly what those gaps meant. Because the operation didn't end with those two strikes. It expanded, simultaneously, across multiple layers of the Black Sea Fleet. At 2:26, additional drones struck the landing ships Yamal and Filchenkov. These weren't symbolic targets. They were Russia's ability to move troops and heavy equipment across the Black Sea. Amphibious capability reduced. Minutes later, another strike hit the reconnaissance ship Ivan Kurs, a vessel designed not to fight, but to see. Signals intelligence, electronic surveillance, communication interception. This ship was Russia's forward sensor node, and now it was offline. The fleet had just lost its eyes. At the same time, the air layer was hit. At Belbek Airfield, a MiG-31 was destroyed on the ground. Not just any aircraft, a platform capable of carrying the Kinzhal hypersonic missile. A system Russia cannot replace. Production ended decades ago. Every loss, permanent. And Ukraine didn't stop at the aircraft. The technical facilities that keep those aircraft operational were hit as well. maintenance systems, repair infrastructure, support units, because destroying planes is one thing, but destroying the ability to use them is something else entirely. Then came the sensor layer. A coastal radar system, the MR-10M1, was struck and disabled. This system monitored surface and low-altitude threats across the Black Sea. With it gone, another blind spot opened. And now the pattern was clear. This wasn't a strike on random targets. This was a layered dismantlement: command, training, air defense, fleet mobility, reconnaissance, air power, sensors, all hit within the same operational window, within the same night. And this wasn't the beginning. It was the continuation of something much larger, because this strike didn't happen in isolation. Just days earlier, Ukraine had already hit the Streletsky Command Center in Sevastopol. 1 week before that, 3 additional warships were damaged, and all of it was carried out by the same unit, SBU Alpha. 3 major operations within 10 days, each one removing another piece of the system, and together, they created something far more dangerous than damage. They created collapse. Because once the coordination layer breaks, everything above it becomes vulnerable, and everything below it becomes exposed. But the most striking part of this operation isn't what was destroyed. It's who did it. Ukraine has no conventional navy, no frigates, no submarines, no carrier groups. And yet, over 4 years, it has systematically dismantled one of the largest naval forces in the region, step by step. First, ports were hit, then the flagship Moskva was sunk, then Snake Island collapsed under drone pressure. Then sea drones began destroying warships worth hundreds of millions. And now, in 2026, Ukraine has moved beyond individual targets into synchronized, multi-layered system warfare. And the consequences are no longer limited to Crimea, because after losing control of Sevastopol, Russia moved its fleet to Novorossiysk. Believing distance meant safety. It didn't. Ukraine struck there too, damaging ships, disrupting operations, proving that no port was out of reach. At the same time, Crimea itself is becoming isolated. The Kerch Bridge has been repeatedly damaged. Rail ferries have been neutralized. Supply routes are shrinking, logistics are tightening, and every strike makes the situation worse, because Russia is now forced into a decision it cannot solve. Defend Crimea or defend the front line. Every air defense system moved to protect the peninsula leaves gaps in Donetsk. Every protected rear area facility means an exposed front line position, and Ukraine keeps pushing that imbalance further. With every strike, with every operation, with every gap it creates. The result is not immediate collapse, but gradual erosion, and that erosion is spreading beyond the Black Sea. Thousands of kilometers away, at naval bases in the Baltic, Russian submarines are now being modified. Armor added, machine guns mounted, barriers installed. Not because of an attack that happened there, but because of what happened in Crimea. Because if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. And that's the real shift. Not just damage, not just destruction, but uncertainty, because the assumptions are gone. Ports are no longer safe. Command centers are no longer protected. Rear areas are no longer secure. And fleets are no longer untouchable. At 2:14 hours, Crimea's air defense network was intact. By 2:30, it wasn't. And the next strike won't need to start from zero. It will start from the gaps that are already there.